welcome to Off the Fence, brought to you in association with Bet365. Happy New Year to you all and all that jazz. We have a lot to get to because, of course, the Christmas period was full of plenty of racing action, loads to dissect and loads to sort of get through in this show in terms of looking ahead to future targets. And as always, I am joined by Tony Keenan, who is the hero of our show after his a plus tard moment. Hi, how are you, Tony?
I'm a bit tired. I started doing a bit of exercise for the first time in a few weeks there this afternoon. So yeah, you were all slagging me off for yawning when you were talking earlier. So that's kind of where I'm at now. How long that'll last with one thing and another, we'll see.
With lots of people, Tony, I like the notion of new year, new them, because, you know, change can be a positive, but not with you. Stay just as you are, please. Barry, how are you? Any New Year's resolutions going well for you over there?
Yeah, no, all is good. I didn't bother with the New Year's resolution.
Because you're perfect. You're perfect as you are, right?
I definitely wouldn't go that far. No, I'm feeling too lazy this year.
Right. Retirement's treating you well, good to know. Right, well look, as I said, we have so much to crack on with and we're going to try and look at it in different divisions, and we're going to start with the Gold Cup picture and the 3 mile staying chasers, and we're going to go straight in with the King George. Of course, Frodon won it under a brilliant ride from Bryony Frost and made all the headlines, which was wonderful. But in terms of that as a, well, I suppose as a race as a whole, Barry, straight over to you, because of course it was a brilliant ride. Is he a proper Gold Cup horse? What did you make of the day's events on Boxing Day? Or St. Stephen's Day. Sorry, St. Stephen's Day.
No, it was a brilliant ride, and that was the winning of the race. But Kempton, 3 mile in Kempton isn't really a test for the Gold Cup. Albeit it's been won by plenty of Gold Cup horses over the years, but it's probably more of a test for the Ryanair, if you like. And I would have thought Frodon is more for that direction. And likewise, you could say the same for Waiting Patiently. You know, the horses who had the pace, San Calvados is another one. So the horses who had the pace, who were able to travel with Frodon, albeit Waiting Patiently was coming from way back, would look more like Ryanair horses to me, where the likes of Santini and Clan de Zobo, who lacked the natural pace for the track, might be better suited with the Gold Cup.
Yeah, it's amazing when you look at the anti-post prices for the Gold Cup. You've got Frodon, who of course won the race at 14-1 with the Bet365. Surnames in there at 25-1. Lost in Translations is 20. Santini is the shortest price of those at 9-1. Tony Keenan, in terms of what you made of the race, but also as a Gold Cup trial, who was your horse to take out of it? Who caught your eye? Of course, Waiting Patiently. I mean, that is a brilliant training performance, but I don't think he'll be heading to Cheltenham. Elsewhere, apart from that, who caught your eye?
I'd kind of forgive Santini his run a bit. I'd say the race was absolutely no use to him at all. A slowly run race with a really quickening up late around Kempton was never going to suit him. One positive I would say about him this year is he's been able to make the track. He's kind of had these interrupted campaigns in the past where he's missed targets and had little setbacks and that, but he's had 2 runs pre-Christmas. He'd probably have another one. You know, couldn't put anyone off him really at the Gold Cup. As I've said before, not the easiest watch. But for me, the horse to take out of it for Cheltenham was St. Calvados. Last year's Ryanair, I don't know, did we think it was a brilliant renewal or a bad renewal? Probably somewhere in between renewal. But we found out this season that it was actually a top-notch renewal of the race. Min would have John Dork on a Plutard, obviously Savage Chase, Frodon's come out of it. And I thought St. Calvados ran a magnificent trial for that race again at Kempton. Far too keen. Was one of the few horses in the field having his first start of the season. Again, I wouldn't be following all the ins and outs of UK racing, but I believe the trainer had the yard shut down for a fortnight beforehand because they were kind of quiet and out of form. So that has to rate a cracking run. He's a young horse. You can definitely make a case for he could have won the Ryanair last year with a better trip. Min's a year older. I thought he was a little bit of a price now for the Ryanair, especially, and this is an absolutely appalling vista that no one really wants to think about, the possibility that there may not be Irish horses at Cheltenham. You know, obviously that would be an absolute disaster on every level, and no one wants to wonder about, but it's not a 1,000,000 to 1 shot. So I think he's got a right chance regardless. Though I would say that this year's Ryanair does look like a right race. Min potentially coming back for the gain. Mellon probably heading that way when owners have got a Boum Photo for the big one. But this horse would definitely have a life.
Yeah, 9-1 St Calvados for the Ryanair with Bet365. Pretty tasty price indeed when you think about it. I suppose for me, I'm just a bit disappointed in terms of the way that race panned out. I know it was a brilliant ride from Bryony, but I guess it was a little unsatisfactory, dare I say. I know lots of people are Bryony Frost fans, Frodon fans. Was brilliant in many ways, but it was a touch unsatisfactory for me. A race that was not unsatisfactory, however, was the Savills Chase. What a belter that was, Barry. Couldn't ask for much more, could you?
No, you couldn't. It was a brilliant race. Obviously with Delta Work and Manila Indo checking out, it took a little bit from the quality, but the gallop never relented. Patrick Mullins pressed on Mellon, and even with a better jump at the second last, he maybe could have fared better. But Kemboy, it was rock solid. It was hard to pigeonhole it, and A Plus Tard, I thought Dara Keefe gave him a brilliant ride. He just nursed him and threw the kitchen sink at him after the last and not before that, which for me meant the difference because he really got to the line. But he's definitely, you'd have to take him into account as a Gold Cup contender on that, but it was just a brilliant competitive race.
Yeah, did you think, tell me this, did Mellon lose the race at the second last, or did he lose the race sort of on the first circuit when he was a touch too keen?
Well, it never helps to be keen like that, but it's funny, you see a lot of Willies do that. They can be keen, and it doesn't seem to affect him as much at the death as it does others. But he definitely lost a lot of momentum at the second last. He'd winged fences down the back, and he was very brave and he was bold, and Patrick let him roll, and I'd say he just didn't want to go back to the well again for another big one, and he just put him in on a short stride, and he lost momentum, and it definitely didn't help his case. But A Plus Tard came home, and we better not take the window of Tony's sail by saying he would have won.
No, fair enough. I think for me, Mellon, I know they might not run him in the Gold Cup, but wherever he goes at Cheltenham, he always delivers. Well, he doesn't always deliver there, but he runs pretty well there consistently. I was pretty impressed with that run from him. Tony, yeah, we should head straight over to you for this, really, because A Plus Tard, bravo you, made a pretty decent, big case for this horse prior to the race, and then he goes and delivers like that. Potentially not how you might have thought he was going to win, but you must have been pretty chuffed all the same.
Yeah, thanks, Vanessa. Look, I suppose that's betting really. You try to put yourself in a position where you have a decent bet, and things kind of went his way pre-race with Champ coming out, I suppose, and things went his way in the race. And like you just half the year you're chugging along trying to have a few value bets, and one thing and another, things go wrong, things go right. He just came right on the day. And as Barry says, very true to say that Manila Indo and Delta Work checked out early. The couple of Mullins horses pressing on a bit early also would have suited them, and you can definitely pick holes. It was just a perfect storm for that. But there is another way to look at it, and I'm just going to be positive with the horse because I've been a fan of him all along. Really, very consistent horse. You can definitely take a look at the form and view it in a very positive light. Kemboy actually, to me, would have been the horse with the single best piece of form in that race. He hadn't produced it last season, but that year when he won at Aintree in Punchestown, there wasn't a horse to live with him. Like he did beat Boum Photo well at Punchestown that year. Maybe that's not his track. So his ceiling is very high, and I think he got back to it now in the Savills Chase for a couple of reasons. David Mullins taken over on board, but I'd say more so going to the front of him, which for some reason they decided they were going to restrain him last season, didn't work at all. Also, Willie Mullins has been saying all along that he thinks Mellon's a 3 mile, and Willie Mullins, sometimes you can't always be taking what he says for bad, but it does look to be the case that was a clear career best out of him when he goes up to 3 miles. So I'd be taking that as a positive. The other thing with A Plus Tard is they had to ride him to get the trip at Leopardstown. That he's never been ridden like that any time in his life, so they had to give him a lot to do, but geez, he did it. The amount of ground he's made up from 3 out, from 2 out, very, very impressive. If anything, you'd be saying, and that was the other two were stopping a little bit in front because they had gone hard. If anything, you'd be saying he's going to be better over the Gold Cup trip. And he's the kind of horse now I just like betting for the Gold Cup. The young horse, the unexposed horse, the horse that hasn't maybe too many miles on him at that sort of trip. I backed him again for the Gold Cup straight after it. Just bare double figures. I think he's a bet at that. I love his upside. I think an interesting facet now is what they're going to do with the Bromhead horses. I suppose Monolith looks like he's out for a while, so that's kind of making things a little bit easier. I would say they were thinking that Manella Indo was to win or to run well in the Savills, they were going to then leave him off to the Gold Cup. But now they have to run him again. So he nearly has to go to the Irish Gold Cup. It's not really an option because he only completed about a third of the race in the Savills. I wouldn't be devastated if a Pluthard was left off. I don't think they need to go for another 3 mile race with him. They know he stays now. Keep him fresh for the Gold Cup. I wouldn't even be averse to see him dropping him back in trip. He jumps very economical. He settles in his races. So a very likeable effort out of him. With regard to some of the other horses in it, Kemboy, I say, come back to his best. I just don't know, is Cheltenham really his track? I think a flat track seems to suit him a little bit better. So
Tony, was he all out at the end? When he's sort of doing that slightly putting his head up thing and looking at, like, I don't want to say ungenuine, he's not an ungenuine horse, but he looked absolutely all out on his feet there, I thought.
Yeah, well, I don't. That's another thing. I'm not sure that he wants the 3 mile, 2.5 furlongs of the Gold Cup. I think about 3 miles is probably more his thing, and maybe on a bit of decent ground on a flattish track. Yeah, he does hold the head a little bit high. He has done that a little bit in the past. That's why maybe front run and get out and make the others go by him rather than make him go by horses kind of suits. Mellon ran a cracker. He has this weird seemingly thing in his form cycle where he seems to flop at the Dublin Racing Festival every season. And then come back to form at Cheltenham. Like, is he going to do that again? Who knows? He's had a hard race there, so that is possible. So loads of interesting angles there to think about. Like what Henry de Bromhead is going to do with his 2 now staying chasers is probably the most interesting one though.
Yeah, where Mellon goes, I'm of real interest for that. Let's head straight on then to Tranmore on New Year's Day. Barry, Boum Photo, his traditional New Year's Day win down at Tranmore, I think that's the way you say it, Tranmore. But weird from connections, as in not overly impressed to start with, then on reflection came round to the fact that it was actually a decent performance. Obviously a bit of a strange race. What did you take from it, and was that the perfect prep, or does he have some way to go?
No, well, sure, it's been his perfect prep the last couple of years. I suppose he was workmanlike, but by the time he got to the line, he won well, and he won 19 lengths from Acapella Bourgeois, who is a good horse. He's 150 rated, albeit it was his first run of the season too. So you could read into it either way if you want, but I'd take it at face value. I thought at the line he put enough distance. I thought it was a good performance in the det, and Willie has plenty of time between now and Cheltenham to get him to where he wants to have him. So I'd say they're happy with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's now 7-2 for the Cheltenham Gold Cup with Bet365. I think there's others in there that are plenty more value than that, obviously. But Tony, was your view that it was, I mean, we discussed it at length on the last show. I mean, that's what he does. He sort of goes around Tranmore a little bit unimpressively and then heads off to the Gold Cup.
Yeah, well, I don't know, 7-2, is it not value? Well, I'd be fairly confident he'll probably be shorter on the day. He is one of these that markets work in all these kind of strange ways, and they're controlled by factors that like ordinary punters and analysts like me will never understand. But one thing that does seem to happen at Cheltenham year on year is the returning champions just seem to get bet in, whether it's public gambles or whatever. So I can't really see him drifting unless there's some news of a setback or maybe a champ or a Manella Indo does something ridiculous in a trial. He's going to be shorter, and you couldn't put anyone off really backing him. Sure, look, he's been there and done it. It's hard to win 3 Gold Cups, of course it is, but he's a relatively fresh horse, and not having to go to Punchestown to me last season, probably a plus. I wouldn't see him running again myself. Willie Mullins kind of half second guessing himself. I'd be surprised if he changes the modus operandi that has worked before and just give him plenty of work at home and turn up in the same manner as the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a bit of a, I don't know, I was going to say it's an get off the fence question, but just to both of you, would Boum Photo have won either the Savills Chase or the King George, Barry?
I wouldn't think of his performance in Tranmore, but he was trained for Tranmore and not for the bigger day. So, he'll be peaked for Cheltenham. That's his target, and he's obviously a horse. And he was beaten and punched him by Kemboy after his first Gold Cup. So maybe that's a reflection of, he needs to be fresh. He needs to go there fresh. So, I'd say Willie has the right idea with him, and he trains him for one day, and it'll take a good one to beat him.
Yeah. Do you, Tony? Same question to you. Would he have won either of the other two big chases?
Probably not Kempton because it was such a tactical race. Leopardstown maybe he would. Yeah, but again, as Barry says, that's not Willie Mullen's way of training. He typically doesn't have them screwed for Christmas. There's loads of grade ones coming afterwards. So yeah, sorry, I am going to be on the fence with that. I don't know, but possibly Leopardstown, yeah.
Fair enough. We'll let you off. You're on a free pass for this episode, Tony. Right, let's move on then to the Christmas hurdle, because of course 2 mile hurdling division was slightly thrown up in the air over the Christmas period. Epatante flopping. Barry, none of us were expecting that. We'd obviously seen her up at Newcastle. She was completely push button. We know what's come out afterwards, that the yard, they were worried about whether she might be in season and the yard's a bit flat. So it's hard on what's come out since, to really sort of take that form for me for the champion hurdle going forwards, because Silver Street, lovely, wonderful performance, but on her day she beat Silver Street, doesn't she, at Cheltenham?
Well, she has done, yeah. But it was a career best by Silver Streak, and the time backs it up 3:47, and Ballyandy is back 7 or 8 lengths behind her. So, albeit visually she looked as if she didn't travel as well as she should, and travelling is her trump card, if you like. So she looked a little bit laboured going to 3 out, and when she missed it, which shouldn't be her, but take nothing away from the winner, it was a career best from him. And they rode him forward this time, which they haven't done in the past. I actually rode him in the international hurdle 2 years ago and finished second to Brain Power, and he missed the third last badly and he missed the second last badly, and he's not the scopiest horse in the world, but I think he's learned to jump and be more accurate. Albeit he got in tight to the second last in Kempton, but I think they're able to ride him forward now where they couldn't do in the past. And he was ridden more patiently in the champion hurdle last year. He was probably beaten 11 lengths, but he's coming from off the pace a little bit. I think he's going to be ridden forward this year, so he's a big player. And she didn't turn up at her best maybe, but I'd say she'll need to be at her best to beat him.
Oh God, I thought you were going to be all sort of team Epatante, Barry.
Yeah, no, I am, and I love her to bits, and she's a brilliant filly, but she's more to contend with this year. I think it's you said the champion hurdle picture got slightly turned on its head. It got completely turned on its head between Leopardstown and Kempton, and she was very good in Newcastle. I would have expected improvement for her from last season to this season, but I think she faces a stiffer challenge this year, and Silver Streak is definitely a better horse, and how he ran and how he performed in Kempton was for me a long way ahead of anything he's done before.
Yeah, okay, that's a very good case made for Silver Streak, and I now feel bad about being so dismissive about him. I guess it was just a little bit, I just found it a bit of a disappointing race, just because I felt in my heart of hearts that wasn't her. We haven't seen the best of Epatante, and I guess that's what's going to make the champion hurdle picture so much more exciting in the lead up. She is currently 13-8 for the Unibet champion hurdle with Bet365, whereas Silver Streak is currently 9-1. So Barry, by the sounds of it, actually, you're making out like the 9-1. Would you say that's value?
I'd say it's value. I'd say the two winners at Christmas are value. Against Sharjah was impressive in Leopardstown, and he probably doesn't get the credit he deserves. Patrick rode a brilliant race on him, delivered him, but he was the best horse on the day. And to me, he looks like that was a career best for me as well, because he was a good winner. So no, I think the champion hurdle picture is looking more open maybe than the betting suggests, but I'd say you could pick either of those to go each way against Epatante. She's the one you'd want to be on her day, but I think they're stacking up, they're queuing up to have a go at her.
Yeah, and that's twice now, I suppose, as well. If you want to sort of dissect it, I guess that's twice she's really disappointed, when she's been very well fancied, obviously, the Mayor's Novices Hurdle at Cheltenham Festival, and then there as well. She can... Yeah,
I wouldn't read into that too much.
Okay.
Nikki had winners over Christmas, but, he'd some horses disappointed as well. So she did look flat. But she wasn't. If she was on her A game, I don't think she was going to beat Silver Streak by a massive amount. And Kempton would be her track, where I think Cheltenham is going to suit him better.
Very interesting. Tony, then, for you, we can roll into the Matheson hurdle at Leopardstown, which obviously Barry's just mentioned with Sharjah and Patrick Mullins. 3 on the bounce for him is pretty impressive. And if that push button sort of acceleration wasn't there for Epatton, it really was for Sharjah. He's now 6-1 with Bet365 for the Champion Hurdle. And he's a horse that continually gets overlooked, isn't he?
He is a bit, yeah. 6-1, I think would still be a little bit thin for Champion Hurdle. I don't know, if it was a career best, it might have been a marginal career best. Yeah, I'd respect him, but I just don't know, is he good enough to win it? Barry's raised a lot of interesting points there with Silver Streak. Definitely the thing tactically about him, this front run, and he hasn't been ridden anywhere near the front really, but prior to that. And that's one thing that could have an impact in the Champion Hurdle. There could be a few of these now that want to go forward in it. If he's there, Aspire Tower is there. If Goshen turns up, obviously he's going to want to be up there. Song for Someone possibly too. Could be a right old gallop in that race. I thought Aspire Tower ran a good race. He's the 5-year-old now at this stage. He hit the third last, he hit the second last, he stuck at it well. He might want another year to really compete at Champion Hurdle, but he's in the mix and he's improving. He had a disastrous kind of second half of the season in 2019-20, but he really has turned it around this year. To me, he took a big step up from Downryle to Christmas. I wouldn't rule him out. To me, the one other strong opinion I'd have in that race, I was really disappointed with San Ra. He was the horse that seemed to have the race totally set up from good pace to run at, and he just wasn't good enough. Didn't love his head carriage going to the last, but just basically wasn't good enough. Like Abacadabras was as disappointing, but at least he had an excuse. He was found to be coughing post race. Like Everton, Willie Mullins was running, seemed to be winning or running well, whereas Gordon Elliott's were a little bit in and out too. That's something probably just worth mentioning. Like that's a little bit of a thing now, just to be watching out for. Gordon Elliott took horses out on the rescheduled Limerick meeting on the 30th of December. He took a few horses out at Fairy House on Sunday just gone. I don't know, look, I'm sure he's such a big operation, he's bound to have a number of different barns and setups and all that. Maybe some of them, like Fury Road was another one that was really disappointing. So yeah, his horses, I think, that over Christmas were very up and down. So maybe you could give a little bit of credit to some of his that did run well, and maybe forgive some of those that didn't run so well.
Yeah, for sure. Barry, just a quick word from you on sort of Sanoir and Abracadabra's disappointing. More than disappointing, really flopping actually, particularly Sanoir. What did you make of that? And like, is he I feel like with him, he is going the wrong way currently, and it's going to be some effort to get him back on track for a Champion Hurdle, isn't it?
Well, he has time, and he's in good hands with Willie Mullins, obviously. But no, you'd have to be disappointed. Everton was teed up. Everton went wrong for him in the Morgiana, and he still nearly won it. And Everton was teed up for him at Christmas, but it didn't happen. And you could see with 3 to jump, he wasn't going with the same zest as he would normally. He should have been pulling the arms at a mark, trying to get into position, where he seemed very laid back and switched off. That he just wasn't. He didn't turn up on the day. You'd hope he can recapture his form, but you know, with 2, after being beaten now twice, he was obviously more disappointing getting beaten last time at Christmas. But yeah, he's a little bit of a head scratcher. But if he gets there on song, I think he's a very good horse.
Okay. Yes, definitely on the something to prove list for me. Just in terms of looking ahead to the Champion Hurdle then, Sanoir is currently 12-1. Aspire Tower is currently 12-1. I mean, on the evidence that we've seen so far at those prices, you'd be going with Aspire Tower every day of the week, wouldn't you? It's kind of to both of you really, but Tony, you've made your point. But Barry, I think... Yeah,
you'd have to. You'd have to. It's hard to, Senrai, you'd like to see him do something positive before you could have a go at him at 12-1. But Aspire Tower, I'd agree with Tony, it's a good run. He's a 5-year-old. He can there's still improvement there between now and March. But I think it's a competitive year. I think he'll have to make a lot of improvement to leapfrog what is there.
Yeah, we've Honeysuckle to throw into the mix there too. Like she's going to be going for the Irish Champion Hurdle in February. Almost forgotten Mayor a little bit, and she may want to go for a champion Hurdle. That's going to be interesting. Those horses potentially all renewing rivalry, and then her coming in over the top of them.
I mean, yeah, there's basically just, I mean, even talking about the Gold Cup and the Champion Hurdle there, it's wide open, and you might not have necessarily, I mean, like on the betting, you have Epatone as a standout, but even just discussing it with you guys, it's so exciting. You can make cases for so many. And for our viewers, we want to hear from you. What do you make of our points in regards to the Gold Cup and, of course, the Champion Hurdle? Who do you fancy? Who don't you fancy? And who do you think really sort of made a very good case for themselves over the Christmas period? Right in the comments box on YouTube. I'm pointing here at the camera, and many of you will be wondering what is going on with my finger. That is a bandage on my finger. I'm terribly sorry. It's a bit embarrassing, but that's what that is. But we want to hear from you. So comments, please, in the comments box, and on Twitter or Facebook, get involved. We read them all, and then we put them into our little WhatsApp group and have a chat about them. So please, we want to hear from you. But let's move swiftly on, because we can move on to the Champion Chase division. Less up in the air than the Champion Hurdle division, because Barry, Chacun Pour Soi at Leopardstown, everyone seemed to be blown away by this horse. I don't know about it. Something about it I wasn't that impressed with, and of course due to injury we're yet to see him do it at Cheltenham. But just, I wasn't that impressed actually. Sorry, I retract that comment. I was surprised at how impressed loads of people were about his Leopardstown effort.
Well, I was one of those. I was impressed by him. I thought it was rock solid. He beat Notebook, who is a good horse, and he's not the best he'll have to beat, but he'd put the kettle on behind him as well. So, no, I thought it was good. I thought it was an improvement, obviously a big improvement from Cork, which was expected. But he's the horse of the top 2 milers. He's the one with the form, and who's held his form, if you like. Definitely the Sai has blotted his copybook twice now. Put the kettle on was put in her place in Leopardstown. So, you know, we need to see Deffy back. Altior then got turned over in Kempton. So it's Chacun Pour Soi has the strongest form. He's the one who's holding his form best of all. So I thought it was a good performance on the day though. He travelled really well. I think he's better suited by a stiffer track, even a bit more juice would help, a stronger run race. Everything will work in his favour that way, but it was a good performance and he won well on the line.
Do you think Cheltenham will suit him? The hill. I worry about, there's something about him at the end of his races where I feel like he's going to really sort of kick on and gallop through the line, and that's where I find him less than impressive, and I worry about the hill at Cheltenham with him. Is that a valid point?
I wouldn't personally. He's a strong traveller, and he probably promises to pick up more than he does.
That's it. I feel like he's going to really kick on, and he doesn't. Yeah,
and he levels out, but then he does stay going. And I thought at the line, in fairness, in Leopardstown, he was doing his best work. So for me, he stays well, but he's just such a strong traveller. He promises more of a kick, which he doesn't have, but he does stay. So that's why I think a strongly run Champion Chase, and whether he has to do it himself or something else does it for him, I think he'll get a gallop. And he's the one whose form is rock solid, and he's the one to beat. Deffy is on a recovery mission in the spring, and Altior as well, albeit he had a dirty scope in Kempton, but you know he's pushing on in years too.
Yeah, Tony, what did you make of it? Were you as impressed as many were? I'm probably completely in the wrong here, am I?
Yeah, no, basically what Barry said there, to be honest. I've seen a couple of people, I was going to ask Barry about that. I've seen a few people saying maybe is he a bit weak in the last furlong. He might be the kind of horse that's far clear going into the last furlong. It won't matter if he's tying up a small bit. I was just trying to think of another horse of Willie Munn's. I wonder, is he going to come back into the mix for this race? Silly Emery. He didn't seem to stay when he ran back in Clonmel earlier on in the year. He could be an outsider at a big price, but this race would seem a race that would have the potential to cut up a little bit. Like you've New Benegra there, who wouldn't have been on anyone's mind, you know, pushing nearly for 10 and 12 to 1 for it now. So not the deepest race outside of Chacun, who does very much look the one to beat, with the proviso, as always said, with him if he gets there.
Okay, well, Chacun Pour Soi is now 11 to 8 for the Champion Chase with Bet365. Meanwhile, Altior is 10 to 1. A very brief mention you said there, Barry, but just one line. Is he still a viable Champion Chase winner? Do you still think he could win a Champion Chase this coming Cheltenham?
I do, and 10 to 1 probably isn't a bad price about him when you consider he had a dirty scope and he was still only beaten a couple of lengths on a track that's too sharp for him. Nico was he was squeezing and pushing from a long way out, and yet he still finished reasonably well. So albeit New Benegra beat him, I wouldn't see Newbury Negra finish in front of him in March. So if he gets there in good shape, he's definitely a big player.
Right, let's kick straight on then to the Christmas hurdle, because plenty of horses disappointed here in the 3-mile hurdle division. I was particularly disappointed in Fury Road. Tony, I'm going to head straight over to you. Flooring Porter, a pretty surprise result for many. Did you see that one coming?
No, definitely not. Simon Rowlands on at the race, I saw it coming anyway. That was a good shout out to him. Sorry, I have to make a bit of a comment here. Like, so many horses in Gavin Cromwell's yard are related to drinking. It's definitely a trend there. There's the Flooring Porter, there's Call the Barman, there's this, that and the other. There's definitely a little bit of a trend going on there with them. Look, to my eyes, Flooring Porter won the race at 2 points. He won it by getting 68 lengths on them at the start, and he won it slowing it down a little bit from 4 to 3 out, and then quickening from 2 out to the last, and just kind of maintaining that to the line. I thought the storyteller shaped really well here. He's a horse I have a little bit of time for. I'm just going to have to read my notes here. From 3 out to the line, Flooring Porter did that in 85 seconds. And the storyteller did the same distance in 85.4 seconds. He got beaten about 6 or 7 lengths. That's only the equivalent of about 2 lengths. But the key part was between 2 out, and the last. Flooring Porter did that in 31.9 seconds, whereas the storyteller did that in 33.1. He was losing ground there, and I think the jockey was too slow to ask him for his effort from 2 out. As the pace was quickening, he kind of sat a little bit and he got caught, and he then finished with a little bit of a rattle to get second. I thought that was a pretty good run. He shipped a good bit better than the form. He's a horse that has had a couple of moderate runs over fences in his career, but he's never been better over fences than at the moment. But he has basically only had, to my eyes, one bad run in his life over hurdles when he went for that American race. I think the Brain Power one he unseated, I think at the last or second last, and he was well beaten. He ran really well in the Pretemps final last year, travelled better than Sire de Berlier, who, to be fair to him, would not have been suited by the Leopardstown race because it was a slowly run race, and he would definitely have a chance at Cheltenham. But to me, the storyteller is kind of the interesting one. I don't think he needs those exaggerated hold-up tactics. In fact, I don't always think to suit him. I think that when he just chased the pace or sat mid-div in the Pretemps last year, suited him better. He doesn't always hurdle that great, but in the stairs, sometimes that's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think they've only 2 flights of jump in the last 7 furlongs. So yeah, he's one I'd have in mind. I think they know he probably can't win a Gold Cup. He probably wouldn't really stay the trip, and he's not good enough anyway. The stairs hurdle, he'd definitely be on the cusp of the places anyway.
Oh, I like that case. Well made, Tony. The storyteller's currently 16-1 for the Stayers Hurdle with Bet365, which many of Tony's loyal followers will be latching onto, I would imagine. A quick word from you, Barry, on that race. Sire de Burley, I suppose, big disappointment along with Fury Road. And do you get Tony's case for the storyteller there?
Yeah, I can see the case, but I think it's a very strong stairs hurdle this year. So maybe in last year's race I could be sweet on him, but I think he's more on his plate this year. As regards Gavin and the drink connection, the owners of the horse, the 2 owners, one is Flooring, is his business, and the other is a publican. So hence Flooring Porter. So it's but back to business. Sire de Burley, you'd have to be. I was a little bit disappointed with Sire de Burley. I know a stronger end-to-end gallop would suit him, but he travelled so well in the Pretemps last year. Even if we had gone a gear slower through the middle part, he'd have been comfortable at every stage. So I was a bit disappointed with him. But like that, you could say maybe some of Gordon's didn't perform. So Fury Road, he was one of those as well. He didn't turn up, but he ran well for a long way though, and maybe he's a horse who would benefit from being ridden more patiently. He travelled strongly, and I think he's a horse who, if he was dropped in and ridden to get the trip, he'd fare better because he has a good bit of pace. So he could do better, I think, ridden differently in a competitive race like the Stairs.
Tactics key, and you're right, it's going to be such a deep race that plenty to look forward to there. We're going to fly on to some novices we saw over the Christmas period, because we're going through seemingly a golden spell of novice chasers. I know it's a bit of a ridiculous thing to say because they're just novices and they're just starting out, but there seems to be some pretty decent ones in there, and none more so, I guess, Barry, than for the Arkle division with Shishkin, who obviously stepped up to grade 2 level after his impressive chase debut. And when others from the Henderson Yard managed to flop, Shishkin did not. At the time, watching him actually in the run, obviously not at the line, but actually in the run, I kept thinking, oh, is he fully there? Is he firing on all cylinders? But then by the time he got to the line, and then in reflection looking at the times, you couldn't be more than impressed with it, could you?
No, but I was a little bit the same. Halfway
Yeah.
down the back, I was thinking, oh, this just isn't going as easy as it should. But Gumball was bringing him along, good gallop. He missed the third last, and Shishkin kicked into gear. It was a good performance at the line, but he's going to be better suited by Cheltenham. Good gallop on a stiffer track, and he proved that last year in the Supreme. So no, he's definitely he's the one to beat, and he's a banker material, if you like. Of the dangers to him, it's probably hard enough to find them. But I thought Captain Guinness was travelling really well in the Supreme last year when he was brought down at the second last. He was probably workmanlike and punched him when he won since then, but Henry thought there was a lot of improvement in him. Now he's had his heart issue in that as well in Tipperary previously, but if he was to recapture the form that he was shown in Cheltenham last year, he might be the next best to Shishkin.
Oh, interesting left field shout, like it. Well, Shishkin at the moment is 6-4 on with Bet365 for the Arkle, so nice and short there. Head over to the RSA betting though, and you have Monkfish, who heads it at 2-1 currently with Bet365, and I think he is really gaining a proper following, this horse, and it's hard not to really like him. Tony, were you as taken with him as many were in that performance over Christmas?
Yeah, a brilliant performance out of him again. I think his price is a little bit on the skinny side. Just going to make a case for another one in that race if you don't mind. The thing about Monk, I would have a little suspicion now that Monkfish might not run again before Cheltenham. I don't know whether they want to cut him back to 2.5 at the Dublin Racing Festival, and the couple of 3 mile races that are there, I think he'd have to carry a grade 1 penalty. Now, no carefully selected, I think carried a penalty in one of those last year, so maybe they will do that. But horses turning up to the RSA now after only 2 chase runs would not have a good record historically. More hardened horse would typically be the way to go, but again, that can also be argued that Monkfish pitched up to Cheltenham with not an awful lot of experience last year and won a really good race. I see that point. It's just his price. I think Pencil Full of Lead is a little bit overpriced for this race. I'm not a great fan of using collateral form the whole time or anything like that, but on a line through latest exhibition, Pencil Full of Lead had beat him far more easily in Punchestown. Admittedly on different ground, but such is the discrepancy in price between himself and Monkfish, I backed him, not a massive bet, but I had a few quid on him just in the last couple of days. I thought his run in Limerick was perfectly good at a time when the yard aren't really firing. They went to Limerick looking for soft ground, that's fair enough, but I thought the trip was all against him. He just doesn't jump quick enough for 2.5 miles. It wasn't even 2.5 miles around there, of course. He just jumps like a steer, and he still nearly won the race, admittedly with Asterion for lunge, falling, whatever. But him back up to 3 miles, I think the ideal scenario with him, he's had his 3 runs, plenty of experience. Get a run into him either in the, I think it's the Woodlands at Naas or the 10 up in Navanny, the 4 runs going to Cheltenham. Might be a little bit ground dependent, but it's going to be watered ground anyway, and if he got rain, I think he's the biggest danger to Monkfish at this point.
Tony, you're making very valid and your cases today for these bigger priced horses taking on some of these shorter prices is very attractive indeed. We can head straight on though to the hurdlers, stick with the novices, go over to the novice hurdlers and the juveniles, because I think the horse I just have been so surprised by this season, but also just he's becoming a favourite of mine, is Appreciate It, who was pretty awesome at Christmas Barry at Leopardstown. For me, I'm just so surprised by him. He finds himself at the head of the Supreme betting at currently 5-2 with Bet365. And he's just a horse who physically and on his background, you expect him to be 2.5, 3 miles, and yet he's at the top of the Supreme betting. If you had said that to me midsummer, that Appreciate It would top the Supreme anti-post market, I wouldn't have had that in a month of Sundays, I'm afraid. What did you make of him?
It was a good performance, and it was soft ground, but you got that impression from Willie's interview afterwards that he's favourite now for the Supreme. Well, that's the way we'll go after he won over 2 mile, but he was expecting to step up and trip. Personally, he'd definitely have life easier in the Ballymore, and for me, he's the novice hurdler who's stuck his head above the rest. I think he's the standout horse at the minute. I think he'd probably win the Supreme, but he'd find life an awful lot easier in the Ballymore, and that'd be the race I would personally go for myself. But
when you say
that was
that,
a great performance.
But when you say that, just for anyone who's wondering what you mean by that, just because they'd obviously go a touch slower for him, but his jumping, I mean, just expand on that, he'd find life easier line.
Well, you'd find that he'd travel easier. Cheltenham's a lot sharper. You have uphill runs, downhill runs, you're turning. It's very, very competitive, obviously. Where Leopardstown is a nice, big, level track, a little like Newbury. So you have time to organise yourself, you have time to jump. The ground was soft as well, so it slowed the whole thing down a little bit. I know I had the same discussion with Nicky when Simon Sigg was going for the Supreme or the Neptune at the time, and yeah, I told him towards the Neptune because he would find it easier. He'd find his jumping easier, and it was similar with Bobsworth. We went for the Albert Bartlett rather than going for the Ballymore. So it's always easier to go up and trip if you have a horse who maybe hasn't got the natural pace, and if they made a mistake at the second last or third last, you could find yourself in trouble. So I think he's a worthy favourite for the race, but I think he'd be nailed on in the Ballymore. But he's the novice of all the novices we've seen to date, and we haven't seen an amazing bunch. I don't think he's the one who stands out.
Yeah, if the novice chasers seem like a really deep division with lots of stars, definitely I'm with you. It's a little bit, I don't know, a little bit less impressed with some of the novice hurdlers, but he for one would be the one for me. Would you, Tony, what would you make of him in terms of A, his Cheltenham target, but B, the fact that he finds himself at the top of the Supreme market at the moment, and he's going to have to take on horses with flat speed and flat form?
Yeah, I'd agree with an awful lot of what Barry's saying there. It does seem to be quite a thin division, the novice hurdling scene this year. Like, for instance, Naas have got this very good Grade 1 now on Sunday, and usually, I was just chatting to someone about this a couple of days ago, you'd be able to pick out 2 or 3 horses stand out that'd be going for. I was looking through the entries the other day, and there's not even anything close to a standout. Now, they could get a big field on the back of that, because everyone will be saying we'll have a go. I would say they will stick to probably the 2 miles, unless maybe he gets beaten between now and then. They really only have one option of a race to go for, and that's the Dublin Racing Festival, the 2 mile race. I don't think they take a jump up the 2 mile 6 at that meeting as well, where the 2 Grade 1s are. So maybe if he gets chinned there, if they went back on good ground, they might think of going for the Ballymore. But at the moment, yeah, I'd say to stick 2 miles. Look, I got him completely wrong. To me, he was devastating at Christmas, an excellent run. I was taken by the run of the second, Irascible. He's a horse that had only one run coming into it, no bumper season. I thought he was off the bridle sooner than most, and he looked like a kind of a Ballymore horse. If I Appreciate It was going to stick at the 2 miles, I thought that was an excellent run out of him. He was really strong at the lane, and up and trip would suit him.
Okay, I like it. One to take out of that race. And if we're talking about the Ballymore, then we can rattle on to Brave Man's Game. Obviously won the big race over here at the weekend. Currently 7-2 Brave Man's Game for the Ballymore. Just had to double check that because it seemed quite short, I suppose. Just looked down at my notes there. I guess, Barry, okay, straight up to you then. If Appreciate It did go for the Ballymore, would you have him over Brave Man's Game?
I would,
Yeah.
definitely. Brave Man's Game was good in Newbury, and he won well, and he was doing his best work from the last of the line. But, to me, it lacked a bit of a wow factor, where I think if you had Appreciate It going around over 2.5 miles, you'd get all the wow factor you want.
Yeah, I think I'd be with you on that. I thought it was a brave old shout from Paul to come out with the next Denman line. I thought that was... slightly bold, I suppose. Any comment on that from you, Tony, in terms of...
No, haven't even seen that race, would you believe? So, no, I won't have anything to say on him.
Well, I suppose let's rattle on then straight to the race I know you will have enjoyed watching, because you're a big Xanahir fan, aren't you, Tony?
Yeah, a very good performance out of him in a race that was so totally different to the Fairy House race. Jack Kennedy was sharp on him. I thought they were really going a slow pace, but he got him into a nice prominent position down the back, and he showed that he had the gears to hold them off. Thought the horse that was second to him in Fairy House shipped quite well, Saint Sam. He got caught down the rail turning in, and I think it was David Mullins on him, had to take evasive action and pull him right out into the centre. I know he only finished 4th, but he didn't get a hard time. I'd say he was probably the second best horse in the race. Although we do now have another juvenile of note, Elmarie Holden's horse, this French Assile.
Yeah, Jesus.
He was something extra altogether now, and they backed him as if he was too. It didn't seem a surprise. He was strong in the market. No. It's all right they were saying Willie Mullins or Gordon Elliott coming back in one of theirs, a 3-year-old hurdler first time out, but Elmarie Holden, I don't know, he must have been round the gallops twice in the same time to take one of her other horses to go out. Well, she won't have some very good point-to-point horses, like so Geraghty was with her and one thing and another, but I can't imagine. She had Expatriate was a good juvenile. I think he finished fourth in a triumph one season, but yeah, he looked amazing the way he cleared away from them from what was the old two out.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose the thing is with juveniles is this is what we have, isn't it? It's like we think we see one that's nailed on, like Xana here, who's currently 7-4 with Bet365 for the Triumph Hurdle in March. But with young horses progressing all the time, as weeks go by, some just develop so much quicker and faster, I suppose, than others. Barry, were you as taken with Xana here? I suppose it's hard not to be taken with him at this stage, but I guess for me, just because of that juvenile, how juveniles develop, 7-4 seems pretty short for the Triumph.
It probably is now with the opposition that's shaping up now, but it was a good performance. I suppose the thing most of all I'd take from him is just he's so professional. He's so relaxed. He jumps so well. He travels. You know, a race like the Triumph Hurdle, you want a horse who's just nice and relaxed, who's able to travel, jump. You can school away, sit quietly, and deliver your challenge. Where if you have your hands full and he's running keen, he's not going to get home. But likewise, French Seal was very similar. He had a lovely way of going, and for a horse with no experience, he was brilliant. So that was a great run, and he looks the next best, albeit maybe Gordon has another danger at home. I'm gonna go to my notes to read this one. Quilioxus, no, I have that wrong, I'm sure. The horse that won it down Ryle of Gordon's. He's in Chepstow on Saturday, but I'm not sure if he's able to travel or if he runs. But he's been very impressive, and he's a very smart horse at home. So he might have his biggest danger at home. But it's definitely the juvenile division is shaping up better.
Oh, very interesting indeed. So much to look forward to. I love discussing it because the more you talk about it, the more excited you get about these divisions. But guys, viewers at home, we want to hear from you. What are your best bets for the Cheltenham Festival? Who are you happy that you sat on Anti-Post? Who are you looking forward to backing near the time because you think that their price will go out? Just talk to us, get involved, go in the comments box, contact us on Facebook, Twitter, wherever you like. We read them all, so please do get involved. We are running out of time, so we're going to rattle through a quick look ahead to the weekend's action. Horses to watch out for this week is the sort of way we've gone. And of course, we've got the rescheduled Coral Welsh National live on Sky Sports Racing. Do tune in. And in one of the earlier episodes, I made the case for Springfield Fox for Tom George, who now finds his way to pretty much near the top of the market for the Coral Welsh National. And I'm not going to be abandoning him now, basically. I'm still sticking with him. I think he's got the perfect profile for the race. He's had a nice little prep run in a Novice Hurdle race, and now, despite the fact the race was put back 2 weeks, it doesn't bother me. I am sticking with Springfield Fox. Barry, you're looking forward to seeing the Hollow Ginge in the same race, aren't you? Yeah,
I thought he caught the eye in Newbury. He was dropped in the Ladbrokes Trophy, and he came from well off the pace and finished well to finish fourth. I thought it was a good run, first run back. He has won a hurdle on heavy ground in the past, so he should cope with conditions. So yeah, I thought he was maybe a little bit of an eye catcher in Newbury and looked like one that was being organised for the Welsh National.
Nice. Well, watch out for the Hollow Ginge probably finishing about 20 lengths ahead of Springfield Fox, but we will see about that. Tony, over to you, because you mentioned earlier the big Grade 1 at Naas at the weekend for the Novice Hurdlers, Lawlers. You have a horse you're looking forward to seeing in that, despite the fact you said that it wasn't exactly a race with any standout horses.
No, I think it'll be a competitive race, a race that we learn a little bit. Jessica Harrington is kind of a strong hand in it with Ashdale Bob. But she also is another horse who was really impressive first time out this year, Cross Hill. Beat a horse of Gavin Cromwell's Vanilla, who won its maiden in Naas, beating Statler, who's won since, and also ran Farouk Deline quite close in Limerick in their graded novice hurdle. So his form stacks up. He ran poorly after that in Punchestown, but I actually thought it was a really weird decision to drop that horse back to 2 miles. She had mentioned earlier in the season he'd be an Albert Bartlett type horse. He is actually owned by the sponsor. So it might see a different horse back up over 2.5 miles. He got a positive mention too of the jockey in a post-race interview there in the last couple of days. So presume all is back going the way they want. And he'd be an interesting runner in that. But I do think it could be a bit like that 2 mile race that Appreciate was in. It could draw quite a big field and be a proper race.
Interesting. Cross Hill then it is. Let's fly on to our tracker horses for the week. Barry, please can I have yours?
I thought Soviet Pimpernel ran a good race in Leopardstown. He was second to January Jets. He jumped badly first in Tipperary, but seemed to jump a lot better in Leopardstown. And Leopardstown are a big fence and a big test, so that was a good improvement. He got hampered at the second last, he got hampered at the last, and he was the second string, if you like. Rob Kerr, his owners, were the same owners as January Jets, who would have been the more fancied one of the two. So he's a horse with a good level of form over hurdles last season. So I think he'll improve a lot for that run and can build on it.
Right, Soviet Pimpernel for you. Tony, who's your tracker horse, please? Who do you want people to add to their tracker on At The Races website this week?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go away from the Christmas stuff and go for something happening in the new year. First of all, I cannot believe the man that trains this horse is 70. Noel Meade was 70 at the weekend. Like, Jesus Christ, if we can all look like Noel Meade at 70. And then Gordon Elliott in an interview saying that in code that Noel likes a good time, so he's not even looking after himself and he looks amazing. Like, Jesus Christ, Noel, fair play to you. Anyway, the horse of yours that I thought was pretty interesting was He's a Hardy Bloke. Didn't really think an awful lot of him in his bumper run, his first maiden hurdle run, but since the tongue tie's gone on, he looks a different horse. Really impressive in Punchestown the time before last. He got held up off a slow pace, but he was able to power through the race, come there to win it at the last, clouted it. Looked like he's going to get beaten, but picks up and wins going away. That was really impressive. And he turns up in Cork at the weekend. Now, it was an ordinary race, but he's just absolutely won doing handstands again. He'd be interesting now if he was going into a Ladbroke hurdle or a good 2 mile handicap hurdle. He's definitely on the up now since that little bit of equipment's been applied.
Oh, I like it. He's a hardy bloke and a nice competitive big field handicap. Lovely. And also, Tony, you're not allowed to comment on people's sort of age and appearance in comparison to your appearance, because I'll never forget when you have been on a podcast for about 2 years and then actually revealed yourself on the Cheltenham Festival preview night, and everyone thought you were about a 70-year-old man yourself, and then was surprised when you were not.
I better keep my mouth shut about that topic. All right, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Right, I think that wraps everything up. It feels like we have rattled through all the Christmas action, but we've tried to make it so we're looking ahead to some of the future targets for those horses we've discussed. That we hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, please get involved, comments, retweets, likes, anything you like. Do get involved, because that's what makes the show, and let us know what you liked, what you didn't like. We want to hear from you. We read it all. Thank you very much, Barry Geraghty, the perfect Barry Geraghty. No New Year's resolutions, but just perfect, just the way you are, Barry.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Aren't I charming? Maybe I've turned over a new leaf this year. Honestly,
this must be the new you.
This is the new me, charming Vanessa. Thank you very much, Tony. Never mind what the awards say. You will always be our hero, Tony.
Thank you, Vanessa. I'll be thinking champion jockeys in the lake don't need to be worrying about New Year's resolutions. It makes sense to me anyway.
Yeah, well, good luck with the exercise. Keep kicking on. We'll check in next week with you. That's it from me. Thank you very much. This has been very enjoyable. And yeah, that was Off the Fence.